It began with a single encrypted message, Priority 1. All senior commands to Quantico. The Pentagon had spoken. No press release. No leaks. Just orders. By dawn, black SUVs rolled through Virginia fog, carrying the faces that shape America's wars. Generals, admirals, strategists, every branch represented: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, even Space Force. 800 of the most powerful military minds on Earth, all summoned without warning. Officially, no one knew why, but inside the intelligence corridors, whispers spread fast: 3I/Atlas. Something had been detected beyond the orbit of Mars. Something not behaving like rock, ice, or comet. Deep space observatories had caught a glint. A structure moving at impossible velocity, shifting course as if by will. To the public, silence. To those in the room, alarm. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, called it a strategic anomaly. But off record, insiders used one word no one wanted to hear: contact. Sensors tracking 3I Atlas began failing in unison, entire data streams collapsing into static. For decades, humanity watched the stars and saw nothing but distance. Now, the distance was watching back. The generals didn't gather for science. They gathered for survival. Because whatever Atlas was, it had crossed the invisible line, from curiosity to potential threat. No one left that room the same. No one dared speak what they feared most. That maybe, just maybe, we were never alone. While the world slept beneath the hum of ordinary life, something ancient stirred beneath the waves. No sirens, no headlines, just coded transmissions whispered through secure naval channels. Redeploy fleets, activate sonar grids, prepare the nets. From Norfolk to Pearl Harbor, lights flickered across control decks as commanders read orders they didn't fully understand. Destroyers slid silently from their berths. Submarines dove beneath black water. Even the sky seemed to hold its breath as entire strike groups vanished into classified positions. Officially, there was no exercise, no war game, no announcement, but satellite watchers noticed the patterns: formations tightening, routes redrawn, carrier groups aligning into geometric grids. These weren't drills. These were defenses. And their target? Not China, not Russia, not any threat born of Earth, but something millions of miles away: 3I Atlas. At first, no one could explain why the Navy, not NASA, was leading the response, until whispers leaked from the deep. Data from the James Webb Telescope showed emissions no comet could make. Metallic signatures, deliberate course shifts, and pulse rhythms that seemed intentional. What if it wasn't drifting? What if it was navigating? Inside secret briefings, the word contact appeared for the first time in a naval directive. Below the surface, hydroacoustic stations once built to track Soviet subs recalibrated toward the stars. Because if Atlas could move through the heavens with purpose, could also move beneath the oceans, the Atlantic, the Pacific, the unseen depths, all turned into listening posts for something humanity had no name for. They weren't just preparing for detection. They were preparing for their arrival. Behind the polished glass walls of NASA, a quiet panic began to bloom. For years, astronomers had studied distant mysteries. Cold, beautiful, harmless. But Atlas was different. Pulsed. It shifted. It responded. Officially, NASA told the world it was a comet 1 kilometer wide, harmless, ordinary. But the real numbers, buried in encrypted files, painted a far darker truth. Atlas wasn't 1 kilometer across. It was closer to 50. That's no comet. That's a continent moving through space. Inside those sealed labs, engineers stared at spectral data that made no sense. Infrared pulses repeating in perfect intervals. Rhythms too structured to be random. They weren't reading light. They were reading language. At first, they tried to dismiss it. Glitches, cosmic rays, corrupted data. But when the same pattern appeared in 3 separate observatories, the room fell silent. It wasn't noise. It was signal. A rhythm written in prime numbers, the signature of intelligence. That was the moment NASA lost control. James Webb's data feed was locked. Access restricted. Independent astronomers suddenly found their connections throttled. The official story, a natural phenomenon. The real story, too dangerous for daylight. Then came the leaks. Anonymous insiders whispered about a memo labeled directed emission source. Atlas wasn't reflecting sunlight, it was broadcasting. When those findings reached the Pentagon, everything changed. This wasn't science anymore. This was strategy. The line between astronomy and defense blurred into shadow. And in that shadow, one truth took form. Atlas wasn't a visitor. It was a messenger. And someone or something had finally answered back. It began as a whisper, a rumor bleeding out of closed-door briefings. Then it became a tremor, rippling through the marble halls of Washington. By the time it reached Capitol Hill, it was a storm. 3I/Atlas. The name that no one could say on record suddenly appeared in congressional notes. Lawmakers demanded answers. Was this just a comet? Or something that could think? Behind the microphones, calm voices spoke in rehearsed tones. There is no threat to the public. Tracking continues as expected. But off-camera, fear had already taken root. Former President Trump took to rallies calling Atlas the biggest cover-up since Roswell. Elon Musk, always reckless with truth, posted, "It's not a rock, it's maneuvering," then deleted it minutes later. But screenshots spread like wildfire. Across the globe, news anchors stumbled through updates they didn't understand. CNN called it a mystery from the stars. Fox News called it strategically concerning. YouTube live streams lit up with amateur astronomers pointing shaky lenses toward a sky that suddenly felt crowded. In coastal towns, families watched destroyers crawl silently out to sea. Fishermen saw strange lights below the waterline. Entire harbors sealed overnight. No explanations, no warnings. And the forums, the digital cathedrals of conspiracy, exploded. Alien probe, planetary weapon, biblical omen. Every theory, every nightmare, every prophecy now had a name. Atlas. But the scariest part wasn't what the public saw. It was what Washington didn't say. Because behind every denial, every calm press release, lay a truth too heavy for daylight. Maybe Atlas wasn't coming toward Earth. Maybe it was already here. By late summer, the mask slipped. Across every ocean, U.S. fleets began to move. Not in drills, not in formation, but in silence. Destroyers formed arcs along invisible coordinates. Submarines dove deep, carrying sonar arrays tuned not for submarines, but for something else. To the world, it was routine readiness. To insiders, it was something far older. Because the protocols now being opened were never meant to be used. Codenamed Opal during the Cold War, these directives were written for one impossible scenario: contact with an unidentified, non-terrestrial intelligence. Buried for decades beneath redacted layers, updated quietly as technology evolved. Now they were active. What triggered it? Two discoveries. First, Atlas's path was changing. Not drifting, steering. Minute adjustments in trajectory, perfectly timed. Second, deep-sea listening stations picked up a low-frequency hum. A sound rising from nowhere, pulsing in sync with Atlas's infrared emissions. Two locations, one rhythm, space and sea, answering each other. In that instant, speculation ended. This wasn't just an object passing by. It was interfacing. The Navy fanned out. Submarines, carriers, electronic warfare cruisers. Even civilian satellites lost access as the Pentagon locked down entire frequency bands. Somewhere in an underground briefing room, a single order echoed: prepare for a submersible entry, because if Atlas could move, it could descend. If it could descend, it could enter. They weren't studying a comet anymore. They were facing a presence. And in every command post, one unspoken thought rippled through the ranks. What if the sky wasn't the only direction we should have been watching? The truth didn't break. It leaked. Not through headlines or press releases, but through a single voice buried inside the Pentagon. A mid-level analyst, terrified, anonymous, reached out to a journalist he trusted. And his words, whispered through a scrambled channel, would rewrite everything humanity thought it knew. Atlas, he said, wasn't solid. Radar didn't lie, the readings showed cavities, structured hollows, repeating geometric voids. Not fractures, not chaos, design. Inside that moving mass were patterns, layers like ribs, corridors, chambers. One engineer described it best. It's not a rock, it's a hull. And that was only the beginning. Hydroacoustic sensors, first built to track Soviet submarines, began picking up something new. Ultra-low pulses, 11.2 seconds apart, exactly matching the rhythm seen in Atlas's spaceborne emissions. Two environments, one pulse, a signal echoing between stars and sea. It wasn't just passing by. It was talking, maybe to us, maybe to something beneath. Inside the Pentagon, silence turned to panic. Classified simulations mapped Atlas's approach. The path wasn't random. It was deliberate, aligning with Earth's orbital plane like a key sliding toward a lock. Some called it coincidence. Others saw intention. And when lawmakers were briefed behind sealed doors, their faces said what their lips could not. Atlas wasn't a visitor. It was operational. Then came the stamp no one had seen in decades. Atlas Event, Tier 1 Preparedness. That code meant one thing only: existential threat. And yet, deep inside that terror, one haunting thought spread through command. If it's built, if it's powered, if it's moving, then who built it? By late autumn, the whisper had become a roar. Atlas, once a speck on distant charts, now dominated every sky map, every war room screen. The data feeds trembled. The voices inside command centers spoke softer, slower, because every new reading meant one thing: it was moving closer. Then came solar conjunction, the blackout. For weeks, Atlas vanished behind the sun, invisible to every telescope, every dish. The world held its breath, and when the glare finally lifted, the heavens had changed. Atlas reappeared, but not where it should have been. This path had bent, just slightly, yet enough to shatter every model. NASA's simulations failed. The Pentagon's war maps glitched. Only one explanation remained: it maneuvered. Panic whispered through Washington. Orders went out in silence. Redeploy fleets. Deepen patrols. Elevate alert. Every movement is deliberate. Every broadcast classified. Official statements called it normal tracking. But no one believed them. Not anymore. Elon Musk teased launch support for national defense. Trump thundered about a truth the White House fears. News anchors clashed on live TV. Markets dipped. Churches filled. And through it all, a single phrase echoed through encrypted lines: prepare for atmospheric breach. Then the world went quiet. The deep sea arrays, those vast under-ocean ears, fell silent. No hums, no pulses, no echoes, as if the signal had stopped listening. Some said Atlas moved beyond range. Others whispered it was here, hidden behind clouds, cloaked in our orbit, waiting. And so, the story ends not with certainty, but with awe. Because the question was never just what Atlas is, but why now? Why reveal itself to a species only learning to look up? Maybe it isn't coming. Maybe it's always been here, watching, waiting. In the end, no trumpet sounded. No lights streaked across the sky. Only silence, vast, unbroken, and knowing. The governments stopped talking. The scientists stopped explaining. And the oceans stopped answering. Some call Atlas a myth, others a warning. But maybe it was never about what we saw. Maybe it was about what saw us. Because for the first time in history, humanity looked beyond the stars. And something looked back. It didn't invade. It wasn't announced. It simply arrived. And in that arrival, the universe whispered a truth our species wasn't ready to hear. That the story of Earth has never been ours alone. So if you look up tonight and the sky feels different, maybe it's not your imagination. Maybe it's watching, waiting for the day we finally understand why.